Here it is, my amazing, beautiful, awesome, very, very clean, just got it cleaned, Dodge Viper. Now this is actually the first, this kind of blows my mind away, because this kind of has launched a whole lot of, this kind of launched me behind a bunch of other stuff. This is the first car out of like 60 cars that I've owned since I was 16 years old. This was the first car that I bought that I spent more than $4,000 on. It was no like incremental steps. It was like, don't pass $4,000 for any car I've ever bought, and then go buy a Dodge Viper. In 1996, they made 1,136 of the blue and white striped Dodge Viper GTS coupes. They're guesstimating, they're trying to figure out exactly how many are actually still out there, but they're figuring at least 1 in 6 have been completely totaled. And a lot of those, a plurality of those, were most likely totaled on the, they never made it home. And the reason these cars are so, they're considered so dangerous is because so many people wreck them. And the reason that is kind of what makes it an awesome car. They have no driver's aids. They have no traction control, no stability control, no ABS. They've got tiny little brakes. And to be honest with you, who cares? I didn't buy a Dodge Viper so I can stop. I didn't buy a Dodge Viper to slow down. I bought a Dodge Viper for other reasons. So the Dodge Viper was the idea of Bob Lutz, the president of Chrysler, back in 1988 when they started designing this thing, and he brought on Tom Gale to actually design it. Now, if you've ever heard of Tom Gale, he designed stuff like the Prowler and the Plymouth Barracuda and the Dodge Neon. What Bob Lutz was trying to create was the modern day Shelby Cobra. And you can actually see a lot of, like the classic Dodge Viper's blue and the classic Shelby Cobra's blue, and you can kind of see a lot of that. And when the Viper first came out in 92, it only came out in the RT10 version, which was just a convertible. The Shelby was just a convertible. Now, obviously, in the 90s, you can't really come out with a mass-produced car that doesn't actually have a top, so they threw this really ugly-looking top, and they also put these basically like Jeep-style windows. I mean, it looks really, really bad. It looks like they pulled it off some old Jeep Wrangler. But then in 1996, the GTS came out. But because these doors were designed for the original RT10 that had no hard windows, and they were a little bit lighter, it's common for Viper doors to actually sag a little bit. That's what, I had this one fixed, of course, but you actually notice a little bit of sag. And when you go to shut the door, it kind of, jumps up to it. That one's perfect, though. So if the Viper convertible was made to be the modern-day Shelby Cobra, then the Viper GTS Coupe was going to be like the modern-day Shelby Brock Coupe, which they basically don't exist. I actually read a cool story about one that they only made like 5 or 6 of them, and there was one just kind of floating around that they can't find that's been in people's, right in someone's, backyard somewhere. Maybe look into that. To put this into perspective, this car was released in 1992. This thing was futuristic. This thing just blew everything out of the water when it came to horsepower, but also just the styling of it. Look at the Mustang in 1992. Look at BMW in 1992. I mean, look at Subaru in 1992. It was awful. And then you have something like this that even still to this day is a cool-looking car. Still looks like a Viper. And people ask me, people don't know much about Vipers. Like, man, what year is that? And they have no idea. Their guess is as good as anyone else's. Almost 30 years later, this car is still rushing it out there. And when it comes to styling, it's awesome. Nothing about it looks like a classic car. Now, even though the Dodge Viper does not have any computer aids or anything like that helping you keep it on the ground and helping you keep it safe, it does have one fairly large advantage. This is a 335. This thing is giant. It's like the size of 2 normal car tires. It had the biggest tire on any production car up until recently, up until a couple years. And it's only been beat by the Koenigsegg 1-to-1, the LaFerrari, and the Aventador. And then the other car that beat it was the Dodge Viper, which the Dodge Viper currently runs 355s, a good this much wider. Even though this thing has giant tires, this thing's pushing over 450 horsepower and 460 foot-pounds of torque. It can snap those tires loose like in a heartbeat. So even though this thing is a fire-breathing demon monster that at every turn is trying to kill you, if you tame it right, this could be an actually pretty reliable, pretty cheap to maintain considering what it is, pretty great family man's car. You got plenty of room for groceries and soccer balls and stuff like that, or just enough room to put possibly one front tire in here. Maybe like put your backpack back there. All right, so it might not be the best family man's car, but at least you can come up with enough reasons. When your wife told you to go buy a minivan and you bring this home, you might be able to convince her. I mean, it does have a minivan key though. That's the most un-supercar key of any vehicle ever. So one of the unique things about the Viper, and this is definitely very unique back in the 90s, and this is, you know, specific for the Gen 2 Viper because it actually has a top and doors. The door popper button is completely electronic. There's no mechanical things going on down there. You press the door popper, it releases it. And then same thing from the inside. You actually, when you pull the door popper lever, it connects the mechanical thing and it pops open. Now, what do you do if your battery dies? Well, that's pretty simple. You come over here, you put your key in, you pop the trunk, and there's a release right up here to pop your car open. Now coming over here and looking at the interior of the car, yeah, of course it's gonna share some things, you know, buttons and knobs and buttons with you know, other Chrysler products. Of course it's gonna do that. Every company does that. BMW does the same thing, and if Ferrari made cheaper vehicles, they would do the same thing too. Mercedes-Benz, you can find the same buttons in a newer one and a much older one, but you know, it's a simple looking interior design. I got no complaints with it. The only complaint I have is I have no idea how to program the presets on the stereo. The Viper seats are fully manual. You come reach over here and you move them up, and the seat belts are on the opposite side. If you're a passenger, you'll assume you're going to reach to the outside of the car. It's the opposite with the Viper. They're both on the inside. Not really sure why that is, but it's a thing. Both window buttons are right here, are in the center. And if you reach down under your seat, you'll find a little squishy bag, and it looks exactly like one of those things that they put around your arm, and they pump it up and they check your heart rate. It looks exactly like that, and it's for pumping up the lumbar. I think it's the lumbar. I've actually never used it because I've never been able to, because it's a dry rotted. Both sides have it. I've actually been thinking about buying one of those little like arm pump things and then taking it off and putting it on there so I can actually use the thing. And then of course, when you pop the hood of your Viper, you don't need to, you know, go inside and do anything. There's two releases in here. One's down here, and you pull down. You grab right here, lift up a little bit. Another little lever that you move to the right. I got to kind of push down and just to the left. There you go, to the left a little bit. At that point, it comes up. Now what you got to do is you want to reach over here, grab from the center. It's kind of made for two people, but just come over here, grab the center, and lift it up. And then over here, what you'll find is the manliest, coolest looking engine bay of all time. I just had this detailed. Now it is common, mine are doing it over here for the magnesium valve covers to start, for the paint to start peeling off. It's common with Vipers, it's common with BMWs that also use magnesium valve covers on some of their cars. The solution is you just replace them with another car that didn't start to flake off. So this is a type of car that you could do a lot of the work on yourself. I changed the temp sensor myself. It was pretty easy. You could change the oil yourself. It takes a lot of oil. But even though it's an awesome exotic, you know, supercar, it's still a Dodge. Fairly regular Dodge with a huge giant motor. Although when I first got this car, I needed to get some work done to it. I of course called Dodge, and the Dodge dealer, just the local Dodge dealership that I called, was like, yeah, we can't even work on your car. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, we're not RT approved. We don't have an RT approved technician. I'm like, come on, that's an old Viper. This is basic stuff. Who am I supposed to go to? And I just went to a local shop. He's like, yeah, I'll work on it. He figured it out. He did a great job. Fixed anything I ever needed to. Now, when you're closing the hood, you got to close it like this. Same way you did it before. Make sure these things hit the proper tracks where they go to. All right, that's in. And then you come over here, you put your hands right here. Push down. Bam, you're closed. Also notice the Viper logo is scaled. So most of the parts for the Viper are easy enough to find if you know what you're looking for, if you know where to look. There are a lot of these that are racked. There's new ones wrecking every single day. The easiest part to find is this little marker light. And I was told from a guy who knew a guy who met a guy who worked at the Viper production plant and was part of that team. Apparently it's a fairly small community. And the rumor has it that they got to a point where they were spending too much money designing the Viper. And they're like, all right, we need marker lights. Now, if you're mass producing a car, if you're making more than, a couple thousand of them, it's no big deal. You spend a bunch of money and you make up your money in the economies of scale because you made, R&D costs a couple $100,000 to make one little part, but you make a bajillion of them and you make your money back. They were getting to the point where they're custom building the whole thing. They got to save money somewhere. Someone said, go down to the local place and grab a side marker light. We're going to make it work. And that would be this. And this actually came off a trailer. And just to prove that point, I went and bought one. Now this is a red one. But you pull it out. It's the exact same thing. Same depth, same everything. Someone else designed it. It's part of a trailer. I can take this off, put it on my trailer. You could put red ones in here too. That'd be kind of cool. I think that'd be illegal. But I thought that was pretty interesting. So there's only so much you can actually say about a Viper before you just have to get in and take it for a spin. Let's go. Now what you don't want to do is do what I did and leave your keys in your pocket. There we go. When you get into it. Now one thing you notice about the Viper is the pedals are pretty close together, and it is a fairly narrow way. I am able to do it with boots. When I first got it, I would only wear my Pumas because they're real narrow, but I'm able to drive with boots. But when you're on the gas, you're the whole way over the gas pedal, you are this close to touching the brake pedal also. Now this does have the, I forget what they call it, like skip shift. That skip shift program where when you're trying to take it from first to second, it wants to make you go to fourth. I think that was something that they did to try to save you money on gas. I don't know. It's not that big of a deal. What's nice about it is the transmission is very, very precise. My Atom is kind of sloppy because it's cable. This is very direct. You don't miss shifts. You know you're in gear. You feel everything. It feels really, really good. When I first got this, with the other tires on it, the other tires were pretty old. It's actually fairly common when you're actually looking at buying a Viper, and when you see a car that has 5,000 or 10,000 miles on it, like ridiculously low miles, chances are the guy, he didn't drive it because it has no miles on it, but also he's not going to change the tires. Now at a certain point, tires get too old, and they're the compound's a little too unsafe. Even Tyler Hoover talks about it on his with his Viper, that his tires were just way too old, and it was just too wild, too out of control. So when I got mine, my tires were out of balance and the alignment was off a little bit. It was completely out of control. If you would get full throttle through second, third, and fourth gear on the highway, you were using 3 lanes to do it. I mean, you were all over the place. It was extremely dangerous, and it was just hopping around. The first time I got in, I was showing the car to my buddy. He thought I was purposely doing that. He thought I was turning the wheel and taking up all lanes. I'm like, no, man, take it for a spin. And the same thing happened with him. It was just all over the place. Then we took it to the shop. We got these different tires, got them mounted and balanced. Completely different sensation. It tracks super straight. You can get on it as hard as you want to, and back end cuts out, which it does a lot, it's, you know, it feels great. I'm not sure how many cars had a 6-speed gearbox back in the early 90s. I'm going to assume not that many. But something like this definitely needs it. I believe this has I think stock was like 355 or something. And I think this is like a 373 gears. So this was geared a little bit lower. People really like that for driving in the street. And just, you know, you have more power. You have more power when you need it on speeds that you might be more likely to do when you're driving on the street. Now it's normal when you start getting up to higher speeds, you're gonna hear whistling, you're gonna hear wind and noises, you know, just coming in someplace. That's just part of it. It is a hand-built car. It's such a blast to drive. You get so many looks. People, you know, like if your wife's driving in the car, you can tell that it's all because of her. Like, man, people are really noticing your haircut. We're getting so many looks driving in this car, but it's not her. It's a car. The car just sits there and it gets tons of looks. We'll jump on the highway, see how that feels. So I've never had any really major problems. You know, with only 43,000 miles, you shouldn't. Oil pressure's good. The only problem is that one gauge seems to go down really, really quick. That would be the fuel gauge. I think some of the Viper guys are saying that they can get high teens if they go on a trip. I've not taken my Viper on a trip. Never overheated. I've never had any of the problems that some of the other YouTubers have had with their Vipers and overheating. There is a Pink, I don't know what album it is, but like the musical artist Pink, that album is stuck in the CD player. So I hope you like Pink. We'll get on it in first gear. Really kicks, and I'm actually surprised how well it grips in most of the gears once it's nice and warm outside and the tires are, you know, not even like warmed up, but just, you know, if it's not cold outside. When I first got this, it was winter time, and I was driving it around as long as there was no salt on the ground, and, you know, first, second, third gear, fourth gear, just, you know, it would cut out, and it was a lot of fun to drive, to be honest with you. So I wish I could say that I'm that guy maybe I don't, but I'm not. I've never been that guy who like, hey, let's do burnouts, let's shred this thing, because if I have the intention, if I think I'm gonna sell it at some point in time, then I feel like I'm just beating up on someone else's vehicle. You know what I mean? I enjoyed the car, and also tires are expensive. Tires are really expensive. I enjoyed the car. If it needed anything, I got it fixed. Any maintenance that it needed, you know, I got that done. But and then I drove it. I drove it the way a Viper should be driven. You know, 95% of the time, I'm kind of just cruising, looking cool, enjoying being in a Dodge Viper. And then 5% of the time, you know, I'm banging through the gears a little bit. Which is exactly how these things are meant to be driven. If you have one of these and you drive it like you're in a Corolla, you know what, just go buy a Corolla and pretend you're driving a Viper. They say to never meet your heroes, but when it comes to owning, obviously a Viper's not my hero, but when it comes to owning one of your dream cars, it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. There's always more. I got a lot of dream cars. I got a lot of stuff I wanna own and accomplish. Don't put it above everything else, though. Don't put it above relationships and family and stuff like that. It's not worth it. But when all is said and done, it is just a car, and it is a lot of fun. But I would never buy a car like this if I couldn't pay cash for it. I think that's a little bit irresponsible, unless you could pay cash, but you think you can get a better rate of return on something else, whatever, that's your decision. If you stretch your budget and you buy a car like this when you should have bought a $5,000 car, you know what, it's probably only going to be hassle for you. Because when small things break, when you need brakes, when you need tires, and it costs a lot of money, it's just going to it's gonna eat you up. And then anytime you get a little scratch or anything on the car, it's just gonna destroy you. You might as well not do it. But I mean, it's been a great car for me. I've enjoyed owning it. I definitely do plan on buying another Dodge Viper someday. I think if I buy another Viper, I want to find one that's a little more modified. And this is stock, and when it comes to collector value, you want as stock as you can get. Obviously the stock wheels look horrible, but I do have them with the car. But you want as close to stock as you can get. That's why I'd like to find one that's been like twin turboed or supercharged, that I can get for a good deal and enjoy that for a little while. But until then, you know, it's great having a Viper. It's great trolling the Corvettes. You gotta watch out for some of those Corvettes, though. But if you're wondering what I'm gonna do with the Viper, I have decided I'm gonna sell the Viper. One of the reasons are I've got other projects. I've got other cars. This, out of the handful of cars I have, this is the second slowest one. That's not why I'm selling it. I'm selling it because this is by far the most valuable, and this is by far the cleanest car, and one of the cleanest 96 Dodge Vipers out there. It's got a clean title. It checks all the boxes off. It really is just it's a beautiful specimen of this vehicle. Now, I have no doubt that if this sits in my garage, I drive it around every once in a while, it will continue to go up in value. It's gone up in value since I bought it in the past like 10 months, which blows my mind away. And every time someone wrecks one of these, bam, this thing goes up in value because it becomes more rare. Obviously, they're not making any more 1996 Dodge Vipers. When you have little kids like I do, you can't really enjoy it in the same way. If something happens to it, I am going to be super frustrated. There was actually a situation where the Viper was sitting right back there. My wife threw a surprise birthday party for me. She's been throwing surprise birthday parties for me like 7 out of the past 10 years we've been married. I still have no clue that they're coming. And some kids were playing in here, some kids being my kids, and they all had these little tiny like Matchbox cars and like little tiny like Hess trucks, and they just spent like the whole day just riding their cars all up and down my car. And when I came out, it looked to be like little tiny white marks. They must have done it 100 times, little tiny white marks around the whole outside of the car. Now you can still see it on the clear bra, which is no big deal. And then all of them came out. It just needed cleaned. But I was so angry, and I was like, you can't sell the car like that. You know what I mean? I was thinking, I got to paint this thing, and that's gonna be $15,000. And it's just, it's too nice of a specimen for me. I'd probably be much happier if this was a salvage title car that I got for cheap, which they're hard to get for cheap. A salvage title Viper with a wrap on it, and I'll get something else. Part of being a car guy is not the car you have, but the next car you wish to buy, and the hunt and the chase. So that's why I'm selling the Viper, and hopefully it's going to go to a good home, someone who loves it just as much as I did.